to a very different 5 minutes at the Frat House with Frat House Mike and Sidekick. And for those of you that have been following the show for any length of time, you might recall it was about 23 weeks ago, way back, I believe the date was on like August 12th or so, that we did something preseason football. We had a little round table going on. We brought together a bunch of people and we just kind of talked football the whole time. All kinds of things, different things that might be affecting the sport, the season, that sort of thing. And so what we thought we would do, since it is now the end of the season, is we'd kind of do a post-mortem. And so what we did was we brought back Brandon, our technical director, who you might recall was in that program back there on August 12th. And we brought in a very special guest and friend of mine, Jim the Voice Williams.
Hello, yes.
Who frequently, some of you might know the voice because you've heard him as a contributor and a regular participant with us over on Fan Junkies Radio. And Jim, I appreciate you being here with us. Thanks a lot. You do a little broadcasting, is that right?
I do on occasion, yes. I do lend my voice to some television and radio projects, yes, and I actually podcast on CLW83.com.
Okay, and you've done some play-by-play work recently?
Done some play-by-play work over the years, basketball, football, and some baseball, softball action. I'm currently the public address announcer at Cumberland County College. I've been doing that for about 10 years now.
Right. That's great. And listen, we appreciate you being here with us and
no problem.
Bringing us all your infinite NFL football wisdom. We appreciate that.
I got plenty. Let's do it.
Plus, I need a little support since I know you're another Philly Eagles fan. So.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Let's kick it off. Here we are. We're in that in-between week right now between the end of the championship season and championship games that we just saw, and now the Super Bowl. And I guess, gentlemen, the first question I would throw out there, and let me throw it to Brandon first. We watched the whole season. Is there anything that jumps out to you as having the greatest impact? Perhaps one event, perhaps something that occurred, maybe a team, maybe a player, something that would have had an enormous impact on where we are today and the season itself?
Well, we did talk during the preseason show about some of the things that were going on with replacement refs and the Bounty Gate issue with the Saints. And I think if you look at it, both those issues turned out to have a little impact. The referees had a huge impact if you really want to go back to look at the touchception game that is known to be called now. You know,
Seattle Green Bay, right?
It totally changed Seattle and Green Bay's seeding. Not necessarily so much for Seattle, but Green Bay had to play an extra game. They didn't get the home game the first round. They didn't get the first round bye, and then a home game after that. They had a home game in the first round of the playoffs instead. And they ended up losing that second game in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if you can draw a direct comparison to it, but things might have been different if that game was in Green Bay.
So you're looking at the replacement refs.
Had a huge, even though they were only in the game for about 3-4 weeks, they had a pretty large impact on the NFC outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sidekick.
I'm going to go with impacts for the season, concussions and benchings. You look, almost a tale of two cities. You look at Seattle, or I'm sorry, not Seattle, San Francisco, and you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Alex Smith gets a concussion, is out. We have Colin come in, who's now leading his team to the Super Bowl, and how the trajectory of their season now has gone. And then you look at the Eagles with Mike Vick getting his concussion, and then subsequent benching, Foles coming in, and kind of Eagles fans losing some faith in their team, kind of knowing at that point the season's now kind of a wash and over. And now you immediately start talking about rebuilding and Andy Reid's record and is he going to be coach again? So that would be my impact.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, it is kind of a tale of two cities because what happened with both of them had the completely opposite effect.
Correct.
Foles didn't do much really. I mean, I don't know where it's all going to go in the end, but certainly didn't have the impact on the Eagles that Colin Kaepernick. And, I was talking about it just this morning with Jonathan on Fan Junkies Radio. I've kind of been a little bit down on Kaepernick and the whole move myself.
Right.
But it certainly is, who are we to second guess when they're going to the Super Bowl? Jim, what do you think?
I was told there wasn't going to be talk about the Eagles' season on this show. What's up with that? Anyway, no, but I'm going to side with Brandon on this one. I think it's Refgate 2012. I think that's one of the big storylines. And 3 or 4 games, that's a quarter of the season it took up. And absolutely, you stole my thunder with the Seattle versus Green Bay Monday. Was it Monday or Sunday night? I think it was Sunday night.
Yes.
Game where
No,
the whole interception that should never have been and the touchdown. That really put Roger Goodell in that deer in headlights kind of mode where it was so apparent, it was so obvious that he thought he could get away with passing off the integrity of the game to replacement officials. You can't do that.
Right.
I mean, we harp and we complain and we bleep, bleep, bleep on the current officials, the regular officials, but we're glad they're back now compared to some of the bad calls that happened, not just in that game, but a slew of them over the course of those 3 or 4 weeks they were in place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you had that one Belichick.
Yeah.
Went after the ref.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Sure.
got in trouble for touching a ref.
I think Belichick in that particular game was just looking for them to just look at the field goal to make sure it went, inside over the top of that goalpost, and they wouldn't
One of the few times Belichick would actually want to talk to somebody after a loss.
Very true.
Yeah.
Nobody's brought up, and I guess if I were going to jump in and say one thing, nobody's brought up the impact that Peyton Manning had on
Oh, God, yes.
on the NFL this year. I don't think anybody really expected the Denver Broncos nor Peyton Manning. I, for one, didn't expect them to have the kind of season they did. There was a moment there was some time there during the offseason and maybe even during last season where I thought he might never play again. And to come back and to take them where they were, I think that had an impact certainly on the AFC. It had an impact. It didn't have an impact, I guess, long-term towards where we are right now because it didn't come to any kind of fruition. But it certainly had an impact on where the AFC is and where they ended up being at the end of the season. So I guess I would have to throw it out there
Doug?
and that's our signal that we got to move on to the next.
Well, that's what that was.
Yes, that's what that is. That's our sports signal that we got to move on to the next topic. I was just bringing up quarterbacks, and I think that is another great topic, and really one that kind of also ties into the previous topic we were kind of talking about. And the question that I would pose out, and let me, Jim, I'll tell you what, I'll kick it off with you on this one. We have had a lot of conversation here at the Frat House over the past number of weeks as the season has progressed and as we watch things. You take a look at that rookie class of quarterbacks that has come out this particular year. And then we've sat back at different times and kind of compared it to 1983, which was probably without a doubt one of the greatest quarterback classes we've ever seen. And the question I would throw out there right now is, have we just witnessed this season perhaps maybe the best QB class since 1983?
I'll go one further.
Go ahead.
You may not have just seen the greatest QB class since 1983. We could be talking 20, 25 years from now. This could be the greatest ever. Let's think about what we've seen in just 1 year. I know it's very early to say that. You look at what Andrew Luck did in Indianapolis. He took a franchise that was left for naught when Peyton Manning hightailed it out because of the injury, and he's made them believers again. Of course, you have to give a lot of credit to Bruce Arians, and you wonder, with a full season under Chuck Pagano, will things stay the same? That is to be determined. You look at Robert Griffin III in Washington. He literally took a franchise that has been besieged, buried, and left for dead by way of Daniel Snyder's doings, because Daniel Snyder likes to leave things for dead. That's kind of his MO.
Yeah.
And he's made Washington worth watching for the first time in almost 15 years.
You got that
and
right.
you look at a guy like Russell Wilson in Seattle. He is now as integral a part of that offense as Marshawn Lynch, perhaps even more in some respects. You've got 3 solid quarterbacks. They may not necessarily do it with flashy statistics, but they are leaders. They are born leaders, and you take any one of them away from their respective teams, their teams would not be as successful as they were in 2012.
Can we throw Tannehill and Whedon in there?
Tannehill to a certain extent. I mean, Tannehill, when I was on the BS Big Show, cheap plug, CLW83.com, tune in this morning. We did a prediction show on the BS Big Show.
No problem.
We all pretty much left the Dolphins at 2 to 3 wins. To get them to 7 and 9, that was impressive. Of course, I find more impressive Ryan Tannehill's wife, but that's neither here nor there. Brandon Weeden gives some hope to the folks in Cleveland. Not as much hope as Trent Richardson does, but he's a decent quarterback, and he should fit well within the scheme of things in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Brandon, what do you think?
I think there's
you and I remember that '83 class quite well.
Statistically, and I'm not even going to touch on the '83 class because they all started different ways. I mean, not everybody started from day one. Jim Kelly started in the USFL. I'm just going to go to two simple Hall of Fame quarterbacks: Peyton Manning, who we mentioned earlier, and Troy Aikman. Both started every game in their rookie seasons and ended up 1-15. 1-15 out of two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Luck and Russell Wilson, 11 wins. RG3, 10 wins. And even if you want to go to Weeden and Tannehill, they both had 7 and 5 respectively. You can't fathom the fact that 3 of the 4 made the playoffs. 2 of them won a game in the playoffs, and you got Hall of Famers. That I think some people could say Peyton Manning be the best of all time.
Right.
1-15 in his rookie season, and you can't say that RG3 or Luck or even Seattle had a lot to start with. The Colts were 2-14 last year and had a fire sale. They probably had one of the highest roster turnovers of any team out there and still had 11 and 5 in a relatively tough division. I think that says this class is good.
But let me ask you a question. Like Jim just said, do you think that this class has the potential to outshine what we saw out of '83? Truly?
I think it absolutely does. I mean, just off the top of my head, that '83 class, they had a few Super Bowl appearances. I mean, Kelly was there 4 times. Elway had 2 wins. Marino made it once and didn't win.
Right.
You go through that list. I think if you're going to count it by Super Bowl wins, these guys have the potential to easily eclipse that.
Yeah, especially in their first season.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson. I'm sorry.
Rookie of the Year. I mean, I know the talks about RG3, but I think RG3, people were expecting him to come out and do good things. Russell Wilson comes out of nowhere, and then I can't remember if he tied or he broke Peyton Manning's rookie year records.
Right. You had brought that up in one of the previous shows. Right.
I think you have to give a solid look to Russell Wilson coming out of nowhere. When you talk about the draft class overall, though, I think potentially the Redskins, look like they came out the best with it. Taking one step.
Yeah, exactly. The backup quarterback there.
Yeah, Cousins doesn't look bad either.
Exactly. Kirk Cousins could. When Kirk Cousins filled in 1 week when RG3 was out, the thing just kept on ticking.
Yep.
And
they didn't miss a beat.
And you throw Morris in.
Morris is just incredible.
There's 3 rookies right there that they drafted, all starters.
Yes.
Cousins filled in for a hurt RG3, but Cousins could be a starter.
Cousins could be a starter right now.
Cousins could be a starter on half the teams in the league right now.
Exactly. And you almost got to wonder whether, in fact, Washington might think about making a move in that direction.
Maybe not next year, but 2 years from
Exactly.
now. They could get 2 number 1s for him.
Yep.
They've got some chips to play with, no doubt.
Yep. Alrighty. We've just come through 17 weeks of the regular season, and we've also had 3 playoff games before we go into the Super Bowl. I'll throw this one over to you, Sidekick, to kick it off. We've heard some talk this season and some insinuation from NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell that, hey, there may be the possibility that perhaps maybe we could expand the playoffs. Now, we've just come through all of the playoffs. We only have 1 game remaining. What do you think of that? Do you think it's a good idea? Should we go that direction? Leave it alone? Look, we're all rabid football fans. I mean, wouldn't that be the greatest thing in the world? Hey, let's add another game or 2 or another weekend or 2 involved in the whole thing. What do you think?
Well, I've gone on record about this before. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to have an extended season of football. I mean, everybody suffers from the post-football depression.
Well, we got this week in between right now.
Right.
What do we got? We got a Pro Bowl. Seriously?
But I'm not a fan of expanding the playoffs and adding more teams in, because I think you kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Dilute
the pool. There needs to be some incentive for wanting to have the best records and to get into the playoffs. If it's like hockey or one of these other sports where you take half the league and you put them into a playoff situation, I think it cheapens it, kind of.
Yeah.
And
yet, NHL is considered to be one of the greatest playoff seasons of any sport, even with all those contributors.
And I think it works for the NHL, but I think for football and some purists, we like having the wild card and that. I don't think we want to extend the playoffs and put more teams in.
Jim,
even though your team is one win away from getting into the playoffs, and you'd like to see them in the playoffs. Sure. I still think it dilutes it too much.
Jim, I mean, come on, it sounds to me like it's a good idea. What do you think?
I can take it or leave it personally. I can see both sides of the coin. I wouldn't be against it. Let me put it to you that way. If they expand things to 16, like Sidekick mentioned, baseball's 10 out of 30. The NHL and the NBA are 16 out of 30, so it's actually more than half hidden in the NBA. If they go to 16, in my opinion, it actually weights those who are division champions a lot heavier. You give each of the division champions a bye week. Two of them would get 2 bye weeks, actually, in all technicality. You have the 4 wildcard teams play out each other, beat each other up and what have you, to earn the right to go into the format we know currently. That could easily work. And this is eventually going to happen. Why? Television revenue, stadium revenue. The owners are going to be all for this. And it makes each week of the season that much more important. It adds weight to the end of the regular season. Those extra 2 wild cards in each conference, it'll bring more drama. I'm for it. I'll be honest. I am for it. I would not hesitate to see this happen because the NFL has carte blanche. They are a license to print money, and they're going to do this.
Brandon, you and I have talked about this at length.
Yes.
And one of the things that you've brought up to me, and I think it's a valid point, is that if we start expanding things, potentially we're going to see an 8-8, maybe a 7-9 team make it into the playoffs, and then we go to what you were talking about before, the whole dilution of it all.
Well, here's the math. All right, if you're going to have 16, you got to go to 16. You can't just add 1 aside. You got to go 2 aside. The 4 division winners get the bye week 1. All the wild card teams play 1 week. The next week's the first round of divisionals where the wild card winners plays all the ones who had a bye. Then all the winners of those games play, and then you got conference titles. So you really, and then if there's still the bye for the Super Bowl, then they get that. Whether they get rid of that week or not, I don't know. But here's the problem. This year in the AFC, the 2 teams would have been the 8-8 Pittsburgh Steelers and the 7-9 San Diego Chargers. I don't think anybody thinks those teams were even modically good, and 2 would have had a chance in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's fun. It's more football, but is it good football? I mean, right now, the NFL playoffs are the best 3 weeks of any playoff season in my mind.
I agree with you.
So, do you hurt that a little or not? I don't know.
I agree with you.
I can't decide where I'd go.
I would love to find something to be done with this open week that we've got, besides something ridiculous called the Pro Bowl. And I think
the Pro Bowl is a joke and has been since its inception. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, I think we're seeing the demise of it. I really, truly believe this probably will be the last year.
And to the point made about the dilution of the playoffs, remember the Seahawks not long ago, a 7-9 team got in as a wild card, got all the way to the division championship round. It makes for a competitive storyline. And you know what? Storylines are what the NFL lives, breathes, and runs on, for goodness sakes.
Can I ask
but I'll tell you this, Jim, I was furious about Seattle making that playoff. I was absolutely furious about it.
Can I ask an interesting question here? If the Chargers make the playoffs as a wild card, do they have the house cleaning they have? Is North Turner and A.J. Smith still employed by the Chargers? If they go into playoffs and happen to win like a wild card game and look decent,
what do you think? Add the extra couple of teams to each conference in the wild card situation in the playoffs, you set yourself up for the way teams, you set yourself up for teams to organize and manage themselves a lot differently with more to play for.
Right.
I think you look at things, you re-examine the structure of the way your team is made up. You try to play a little bit harder, you make different moves than you would make under the current clinching of a playoff situation. I think that there are a lot of variables in play.
So are you trying to say, Jim, that perhaps maybe the teams would play differently? If in
I think they could. I think they have more motivation to step their level of play up, I think.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's interesting. If we were to vote on it, if we were to sit here and vote on it as a 4, I, for one, am in favor of expansion of the playoff. Jim?
I'll say yes.
Sidekick?
Sorry, I'm a no.
And Brandon?
I'm on the fence, but I'm going to lean towards no because I'm afraid it would kind of take away from that first week.
Interesting. It goes 50-50.
What happened?
As a fan, you know, we go back 2 years with the Seahawks and the Rams, both competing to get into the playoffs. I was praying that the Rams did not get in at 7.
Yes, I remember that.
Because I didn't want them to have to deal with all the negativity that I felt was going to come because they had a losing record,
right?
And were getting in. So I was praying for them to lose that game and not get into the playoffs because I didn't want the team to have to deal with that, being a young team that they were.
Right. Right.
As much as I want to see my team in the playoffs,
but I think
also don't want to see negative.
I think you're an anomaly. I think you're an anomaly. I think that the San Diego Chargers fans probably would have been thrilled had their team made the playoffs.
And the way it would have played out, the Chargers would have played the Colts in Luck. You know, would that have been fair for Andrew Luck to get knocked out by a team that?
But as you point out, I think
couldn't be there.
I think, as you point out, North Turner probably wouldn't have minded.
Yeah, this is true. It goes both ways, and you know, I'd have to see it. And if it happened, I'd probably be okay. But I just have reservations a little bit about some, you know, subpar teams making it.
Well, plus you throw the cliche any given Sunday.
Well,
exactly.
You know,
right.
The other side of my argument is the NFC side. You still would have had all winning teams this year, so maybe my argument may not hold too.
Well, I mean, it varies with each season. It varies with each season every year.
Oh,
so.
obviously, right.
The NFC was a lot stronger and beat the AFC a lot more than they did, and that's why the NFC has 10-win teams not in the playoffs.
Right.
Exactly.
All right, well, here we go. A week from now, we're going to be taking a look at the only game left remaining in the NFL season, and we're going to have the Baltimore Ravens going up against the San Francisco 49ers.
Horrible.
The Harbaugh, right, exactly. Which I think is a great storyline, to be perfectly honest. Jonathan and I were talking about it just this morning on Fan Junkies Radio. I think that really is one of the more interesting storylines of the whole thing. But before we get to that point, I think that there's probably a lot of people in shock that it wasn't the complete opposite, that it wasn't Atlanta and New England. Brandon, where are we coming down on this one?
Hey, I'm wearing my Patriots jersey. I was
You crying in your beer this morning?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm disappointed, but as Belichick said in his press conference today, they were the better team yesterday. They made the plays. The Patriots didn't. Every time the Patriots got, from inside their 30, 35-yard line, it was generally ended in a turnover. They didn't do what they needed to do to get there, and the Ravens did. They earned it. They played harder. They won. So, yeah, they deserve to be there.
Okay.
Now, the other side, I was a little surprised. I thought Atlanta was going to be, they were at home. Their quarterback has a little bit more, experience than Kaepernick does, but they couldn't get it done either. They kind of, if you looked at both their games, they jumped out to big leads. They were out to 20-0 in Seattle and had to sweat that out. They had 17-0 on San Francisco and came back to lose. It's like they can't finish. They can start big with all the energy and then they just kind of let it up.
Yep.
It's almost like they're playing prevent defense from the third quarter on, and that goes well, obviously.
That's a great point, Jim. Let me ask you a question. The early lines that we've seen on the game, running anywhere from 4 to 4.5 in favor of San Francisco. Is that a surprise to you?
Not at all. I mean, this game to me is a pick'em game because these two teams are so evenly matched. Both have dynamic quarterbacks, and I never thought I'd say that about Joe Flacco.
Thank you.
I often nickname Joe Flacid, for lack of better terms.
Wow.
But he's gotten the job done. He's made big play after big play after big play in this postseason. Pay this man his money, Baltimore. He deserves it. Pride of University of Delaware. Meanwhile, conversely, for San Francisco, put you this way, they're evenly matched up. Both have strong defenses. Both have great running games. Passing games are very good as well. This is a coin flip. In fact, I have a coin right here. I might just flip later on just to give my pick.
Right.
That's how close this game is. It really is.
Let's talk about that defense for a second, though. I think there's a bit of an anomaly there, or maybe a misconception. San Fran, for the season, ranked number 3. Baltimore was ranked 17th. Really? Is Baltimore really that good? Seriously? 17th ranked overall defense in the entire NFL. Sidekick, where do you see? What are your thoughts on this particular game and this matchup?
Well,
I know you're happy about Baltimore.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I'm not that shocked about this weekend. I mean, we talked about on the show. We both said we thought Atlanta had the hot hand and was going to win over San Francisco. But then I also said at the end of that I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta lost, because that's kind of been their MO the past couple of years.
Yep.
But we thought maybe they were going to shed that this season and this was going to be their year.
Yep.
And, well, maybe not.
Let me throw out a couple of real quick questions before we run out of time.
Sure.
I made the question, I posted to Jonathan this morning. Does Atlanta make changes this offseason?
I don't see how they can make many changes.
Yeah.
I mean, the only question mark is who are you going to get to fill the albeit potential void of Tony Gonzalez if he does indeed retire, which all accounts say he will. That's the only thing they need to worry about. They've got a good nucleus in place. Don't mess with what they've got.
Mm-hmm. I could see them maybe on defense adding a good cornerback. I think Asante Samuel's proven at every stop that he's not. He's not as good as he thinks he is. I mean, yes, he can return a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but he can also drop passes, that he should catch as a cornerback.
And he can blow coverage like nobody else.
Yes,
so.
And he gets burned, and that was part of the problem at the end of that game yesterday. They could use some secondary help. I think offensively, they're stacked.
Go ahead.
I think you jettison Turner and Rodgers, and you go after and you try to get
I'd keep Rodgers.
I was going to say, I don't know about Jacquizz Rodgers. He looks like he's going to be good.
Well, Turner's in his ninth year.
Turner's
he's in his ninth year.
Maybe give Rodgers a start as a primary and get a new one.
Rodgers is only in his second year. I would continue to hang on to him, but that was one of the areas that both Jonathan and I had diagnosed this morning in the radio show, was that we felt that Atlanta needed a little bit of running help. That's what we thought.
Yeah, that I think that would take them over the top offensively. They do need to work a little bit on that defense.
I'm going to put Jim and I'm going to put Brandon on the hot seat. Sidekick and I are going to make our. We're going to make our Super Bowl picks in next week's show. Brandon, what Baltimore or 49ers? Where you got it?
Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the 49 or the Baltimore Ravens. The 49ers are the flashy pick because they have the new offense. Kaepernick's the hot quarterback right now. But I think in the end, I think that defense is going to play everything they got to make sure Ray Lewis goes out of there with the ring.
Yep.
And Flacco's been, as Jim pointed out, fabulous in the postseason so far.
Yeah, he really has.
Nobody expected it. He doesn't have an interception for the entire postseason. I mean, we're talking things like, normally Tom Brady and Peyton Manning does, but Joe Flacco's doing it. So I think the Ravens are going to win. It's going to be a good game, though.
Jim, flip your coin.
Oh, there we go. It says Texas. Oh, that's no. Okay, seriously, I think San Francisco wins this. It's going to come down to a 3 or 4 point swing. And wouldn't it be poetic justice, Mike, if David Akers, through all the trials and tribulations he had during the course of this season, and this postseason, of course, he missed a key field goal in the conference championship game, wouldn't it be poetic justice for him to get the game-winning field goal in the Super Bowl? I could think of nothing better. I think San Francisco wins this in a close one. I think Colin Kaepernick is the difference maker in this game. He is for real. It's making people forget about Alex, what's his name? Trebek.
Harris. Alex Harris.
No, that's not it.
Hey, Jim, you might need to remember that name. There's talk the Eagles might focus in on trading for that Alex, what's his name?
It could be, although I think Chip Kelly is going to go with Nick Foles ultimately.
I don't think he has much choice.
Pac-12 allegiances and what have you. He's spoken very highly of him in the past. I don't see any way Michael Vick stays in this town. I really don't.
I don't think Chip Kelly has any choice but to go with Foles, at least for this year. We don't have anybody else to pick from, and the draft is not very good. So,
and you can't judge Foles' performance truly on this season because he had no offensive line.
Bingo. Yep. All right, Jim. I'll tell you what. Go ahead. Throw your pitch in there one more time for CLW.
Oh, bless your heart. You're a good man, Mr. McShane. Yes, it is CLW83.com. We do podcasts every week ranging from sports to politics to video games. And a special shout out, we're doing a special podcast during the Super Bowl. And we have a pregame thing during the Super Bowl. We have a running tradition. We've done this for a couple of years. You know how Bodog has the unique game lines for Super Bowl events?
Yep.
Our traditional thing, we do the over-under on how long it will take for insert anthem singer here to sing the national anthem. It is a tradition unlike any other. Masters. So CLW83.com, check it out and tune in, won't you please? And thank you for having me on, Frat House Mike and Sidekick.
We appreciate you being here. Let me run around real quick. Let me just throw a couple of quick shout-outs myself. FanJunkies.net, get over there where sports meets social networking. Tune in to Jonathan and I Monday, Wednesday, Friday over on Fan Junkies Radio on Blog Talk Radio. Plus, 5 Minutes at the Frat House rebroadcast every Saturday with me at 3 o'clock over on Fan Junkies Radio as well. HerbFM.com down in Washington. They've been rebroadcasting us and we appreciate it. Jim, we appreciate you being with us here today. Brandon, thank you for joining us in on this one. We're going to probably do this again, you got to know, sometime in August, and we'll bring back the preseason roundtable, and we'll get some of these guys back. In the meantime, you know what you got to do. You got to keep us real, you got to keep us live, and you got to keep us going. See you next week.
Man, bro.
Oh, I think Jim made a great choice in starting Cumbersack.
Actually, I think it's Cumbernack.
It's Cooperduke.
I'm pretty sure it's Humperdinck.
Nickelback.
Cumberbund?
I feel like we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I agree, yes. John is a little less amped up than Jim, but let's face it, he has a lot less to be excited about.
Flacco's no Sanchez!
Well, Ray Lewis is like The Wire. Both are great, both are from Baltimore, and both scare the hell out of Middle America.
Yeah. Hey, lazy eye.
Warren Sapp.
Rephrase your question and trim your nose hair.
Mom?
Hey, Dick Vermeil.
Love the tie. Stupid question.
Vice President Biden, go.
Oh, dude, have you heard of this Manti Te'o stuff?
Oh, fake girlfriend. Oh, I've been there. And she was hot.
All right, and congratulations to future Hall of Famer Tony Gonzalez. He now has as many playoff wins as Tim Tebow.
Oh, burn!
Thought I was being nice.